California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill into law Thursday that bars local governments from enacting laws to require residents to show a valid form of identification in order to vote. Let me read that again. Gavin Newsom signed a bill into law. It's law now in California. These idiots, this moron that bans and bars local governments from basically saying, show me your ID if you want to vote. Nope, you don't need an ID to vote anymore. It's like, where the hell are we living, man? And then the last one that's kind of spooky, Ford has patented a new system, Ford, the auto manufacturer, that per the filing would use several different sources of information to customize ad content to play in your car. One such information stream that this hypothetical system would use to determine what sort of ads to serve could be the voice commands you've given to the car. It could also identify your voice and recognize you and your ad preferences and those of your passengers. Finally, it could listen to your conversations and determine if it's better to serve you as a visual ad while you're talking or an audio ad while there's a lull in the conversation. So now you got Alexa listening to you, you have your phones listening to you, now you have Ford Motor Company listening to you. When we talk about the erosion of privacy, it's real. You don't need to have an ID to vote. You can just go in off the street with, your swim trunks on and nothing else and vote and just say, yeah, I'm Andy Shectman and okay, Andy, go vote. Then Andy goes there with his ID and says, well, what the hell? I'm Andy. No, it shows you already voted. I mean, the whole thing is just absurd. And then we have our Congress busy at work in a world when the country's upside down, talking about a mass casualty event and sidestepping what has been a several hundred-year-old tradition of having a special election. No, just like Kamala, we're just going to put them in there. We are becoming a different country, my brother, from where we once were. So now that I got all the stupidity out of the way, happy to chat about it or move on to the markets.
So if we're talking about elections or faulty elections or rigging elections, not having to show IDs would be the easiest route. I mean, what about double voting? Or, of course, they're doing this because all of the illegals they brought over, they would want to vote for X candidate, obviously, but that just seems so crazy. Like, that cannot be real. I honestly, like, is that real? Like, did they push this or is he trying?
It's a law. It was passed on Thursday. It is
that
a
is
law.
Insane.
And you look at the you read their rationalization, and I want to puke reading it. I mean, someone could go to come here to Florida from Georgia and just say that they're me. Well, in Florida that wouldn't fly, but someone could be in Nevada, go into California, open the phone book. Yeah, my name is Jaime Pipic. Okay, Jaime, well, you're good to go. I mean, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but all I can tell you is that it's a privilege to vote. If you are a felon, you can never vote again. But if you're in this country illegally, I guess it don't matter. And if you are and they try and basically say this is about the underprivileged. Well, give me a freaking break, man. I don't care how poor you are. You can have government ID. You can go in and get a non-driver's license ID if you have to. And I mean, what world do we live in where you don't have to have ID to do things as monumental as voting, which is the pillar of this country, right? I don't know. It's just, I wonder sometimes, I mean, are we living in bizarro world? It's bad enough that we don't know what a boy and a girl is. It's bad enough that you are identified by your lifestyle rather than by your merit. It's bad enough that the inner cities are lawless and crazy and dangerous. It's bad enough that the world questions the integrity of our judicial system, our immigration system, our electoral system. And you wonder, we should be doing all we can to shore that up. Instead, this idiot Gavin Newsom, who happens to be Nancy Pelosi's nephew, it's just, you can't make up the stupidity. And don't these people love their families? Don't these people love the country that they grew up in, that gave them all these opportunities? Or are they just selling us all down the river for a bigger agenda? Holier than thou agenda. The same guy that mandated no one could leave their house but was eating at the French Laundry with all of his friends without wearing a mask. The whole thing is just pathetic. And it all is part of a bigger picture. You know, it isn't about silver, it isn't about gold. But when you put all of these pieces together, the irresponsible fiscal policy, the brain dead monetary policy, the sanctioning of the currency, the image that we are squandering around the globe, and then all of the stuff here, from the borders to the elections to the judicial system to the wokeness to all of it. It's not lost on the rest of the world. It's not lost on our creditors. And when we live in a world that is based upon trust, because we aren't backed by anything anymore, so it is the full faith and trust and credit. Well, we already know we're broken and solvent, 123% debt to GDP. So throw the credit thing out the window. That doesn't even take into account the 200 trillion in unfunded liabilities and the faith. I mean, how do you have faith in a country that the world views as completely hypocritical and off the rails? So I bring these stories up not because they're sensational, but because to me it's all part of the same shit Sunday. And it's these individual pieces in and of themselves are noteworthy, but you put them together in the same dish and you're like, my God, I mean, look at what's happening, whether it be Cloward Piven, whether it be, are we trying to lose the reserve standard? Are we trying to reset the system? Where is the fiscal sanity of spending $1 trillion every 90 days, 100,000 per second? Where is it? Where is the history of this country? Pledge of Allegiance, honoring the flag, honoring our leaders, like our principals and our teachers and our police officers and all of, defund the police. I don't mean to go on a soapbox, but I just think this stuff is getting out of hand. And when we talk about the acceleration, it's accelerating, and it's accelerating in a big way. And I think it's time for people to really start to prepare. And that would mean things such as food and water and a gun and shoot your gun, know how to use it. This is getting real. And I think with 40 days left before the biggest election of the country, and our idiot Congress is talking about a mass casualty event.
Yeah, you mentioned something a little earlier about precious metals and being able to take control of your wealth. I've had some pretty large orders from clients lately, and they talk about how their bank makes it so hard for them to spend their own money. And she was mentioning, like, it's almost it's a little relieving knowing that now I'm in control of my money. Right? Because obviously, if it was this hard for me to just get my own money, and then afterwards they're making such a big deal about it, well, then that speaks for itself, And I've seen that more than once. I remember when you talked about that $50 million order from the Texas billionaire, how hard it was. It took how many meetings with her bank you mentioned, or they
4 days
over
over a weekend, and that's why she wanted me to tell everyone to simply say that it's a lot easier to deposit money than to get it out. And let's not forget that you are an unsecured general creditor of the bank, and you are i.e. the last to be paid. So when you deposit money, you're not depositing shit. You're putting money in the bank, which is giving the bank an unsecured loan. You are lending the bank money, and it's unsecured. You don't have any collateral, and they just say, I'm going to pay you some interest. And for years, it's been poultry interest, but that's what the Dodd-Frank Act says, that you are an unsecured general creditor and you will be bailed in if there's a problem. So, I think if I had $1 for every time people who get it are buying large orders because they don't trust the banks, I could buy a few gold coins out of that, because that is the issue. And they just today was the integration of the Dodd-Frank reform, not the Dodd-Frank, sorry, the Basel III reform, where the banks have to have up to like 4.5% collateral or reserves. And that's a well-capitalized bank. Up since the pandemic, it's been zero. So you give them money, they take it and buy treasuries or something. They don't have to leave it in reserve. And that's why the banks got in trouble, because too many people said, give me back my money. They didn't have it, so they had to sell their underwater treasuries. Well, if 4% is a well-capitalized bank, I mean, think about it. If you had 4% of the money that you understand what I'm trying to get. I can't give a good example, but the good example would be, let's just say everyone gave you their money for for a fantasy football league, and you're the commissioner of the fantasy football league, and it's a $500 entry fee, and all you keep is 4% of it, at the end of the year, there's a problem if what you invested the 96% in is underwater. And now you have to sell it, and how do you pay everyone back? Because you only have 4% on hand, and maybe everything's down 20%. That's what happened over the last few years when they raised interest rates by 500 basis points, and all those treasuries were underwater that were purchased at 1% and 2% interest rates. But it's just it's a problem, and the banks are probably the root of what I think will be, some sort of a mass awakening event where a bank is bailed in, and maybe it's a bank like Bank of America that is sacrificed at the altar. Maybe that's why you see, Warren selling all of his stock in Bank of America, the bank that ironically had a 1 billion ounce silver short position in the OTC market and 35 to 40 million ounces of gold short, naked short. So who knows? But as the Chinese curse says, my brother, may you live in interesting times. And these are anything but dull and boring.